Well, I think let's begin our evening here. We want to welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for our community sports symposium. And tonight's topic will be the safe sport movement. We're very excited to have Isabelle Caillé from the Coaching Association of Canada, who is the director of sports safety, who is going to present to us tonight. As we are all coaches and parents and key stakeholders in the basketball community here in Alberta, I think we've come across so many instances where the safety of our athletes, coaches, parents, and everyone involved is very important. But most importantly, for the young people coming up in the sport, to to have an environment where it's safe to participate, travel, and enjoy the game of basketball. I was, as we were preparing for this, reflecting on an experience I just had this past weekend with the team that I coach at Concordia University. We were returning home from our game on Friday evening. It's a late night. You're on the bus coming back, and we're on the highway, on the Yellowhead Highway, coming back into the city, and we noticed a vehicle in front of us that's not driving the way someone should be driving on the highway. It was clear that the driver was impaired on the highway, and we think about instances that have happened recently in Canada with bus accidents and things of that nature, and we were discussing for a moment on the bus with the coaches, what should we do when we see someone, signaling the wrong way and moving over and weaving between the lanes and driving down the middle of the road. And, you've got about 30 people on board and someone driving in a way that would put people at risk. And we did make a decision to call the RCMP and notify them that somebody was driving out of control. And thankfully that person did finally pull over before police arrived, and the bus was able to get past them. But thinking just even in a small situation like that where something catastrophic could happen, and I think important of when you see something, say something, and feeling confident that there are channels and ways for us to keep the sport safe, whether it's in our travel, in our day-to-day interactions with our athletes, coaches, and parents. So we really want to thank Isabelle for taking the time to put this presentation on for us. We've seen it, looked through it. It's just fantastic. And so without further ado, we'd like to turn the time over to Isabelle to share the safe sport movement with us.
Thanks a lot, Reagan, and thanks everyone. Really excited to be here tonight, and thanks to Alberta Basketball for having me, and to everyone who's here taking the time. So just a little bit about myself. I've been at the CFB for about 11 years now, and this position opened up a year and a half ago, and it's really just everything that I wanted to work in. And sport's been a huge part of my life, and I was an athlete, a coach developer. I've been working in sport for a long time now, and I've also volunteered with a local skating club, so it gives me really good perspective to see what's happening on the ground as well. And also had children in sport, and see it from a different lens when you're a parent as well. So it's there's always opportunity to learn and grow through different sport experiences. So really just happy to be here, and just wanted to give a minute for everyone to maybe put in the chat just what sort of position or are you in, or are you joining tonight, just to get a sense of who's in there, if you're able to put in the chat. I know you probably wear many hats, but we'll just to get a sense of who's on the call. Or maybe everybody here knows each other. Can people access the chat? I also forgot to mention that I'm here in Ottawa, so I'm on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. And I really enjoy the land and working and playing here. Awesome. Okay, so we've got a mix here. We've got a lot of coaches too. So yeah, just to get started. So I wanted to start with really just trying to create a bit of a brave space and a space that we can all just dialogue, have a good conversation tonight about safe sport, hopefully gain a bit of understanding or just, tapping into your perspectives. And just want to start with asking a question, and then we'll move, and feel free to ask questions at any point during the presentation. Any burning questions you have, and if there's something not related to what I'm presenting, that's okay too. So I'm pretty open to whatever you're really wanting to hear about tonight or come away from. So if there's a question you have, so we'll just skip over to the next slide and just ask a question about what safe sport means to you. We were originally going to do a poll, so we were going to give you one choice, but you can choose whatever you like from your own context. Yeah, exactly. There's just so many definitions of safe sport, and we'll move into the next slide just to get things going. So there's so many definitions, and safety means different things to different people. So for sure, we're trying to create some language around it, and really we're in a bit of space right now where the culture is changing, or we're going through a bit of a culture renovation in sport. And so we, in addition to it being free of, abuse, discrimination, neglect, etc., we really want to get to that space of it being accessible and inclusive. And the process we're going through right now is really trying to set up some procedures, some training, some policies that are really in the preventative area. And then, as we go through that process, we'll get to a place where there'll be a new normal in sport. So that's really just a way to ground us in, the conversation we're going to have tonight, but for sure, it'll continue to evolve over time. And I just put that little caption there from Jen Botterill about, regarding the Kyle Beach, the devastating story and events that happened with the Blackhawks. But, the fact that she's putting, the education prevention is really key to the work that we do as well. And, we hope will contribute to safer sport environments. Okay, we'll move forward. So I just want to start because, safety in sport is really about the culture of sport. And, there's different cultures depending on the sports you're in, but all of these contributing factors on the left are things that we know about sport, because, when we look up the definition, it really is about a sports system is directly connected to the subsystems of health, science, culture, upbringing, and education, and it develops people and contributes positively to mental and physical health. And so safety means healthy relationships grounded in trust and respect. And without that safety, trust is destroyed. So there's so many contributing factors to the benefits of sport, and those things were and continue to be somewhat in jeopardy with COVID and other things happening. So it really has that platform to positively impact our lives. And the model that I put here is really how culture shapes that, and it's at every level. So when we talk about, like, we've got that tagline around everyone has a role to play in safe sport, that's really what this model is talking about. It's that we have our own beliefs about, as an individual, and our own experiences in sport or with others that we interact with, whether it's coaches, officials, what's happening when you're engaging within your organization, within your community. And like, the policy piece is critical because policy sort of set those directions. So whether it's the Canadian sport policy or policies in your club, policies that federal government's mandating, those things all contribute and are what are leading to some of the culture shift that we're seeing now and how people are responding to that. So that was just a way to sort of zoom out a little bit about the conversation we're going to have and how culture plays into that. So if we can advance. So I wanted to start just because I wanted to start in on the theme of safe sport. And we launched our Spaceport Training on April 1st, 2021. And we've had over 43,000 people take the training to date. So it's been pretty huge. And it is mandated for national sport organizations, but certainly a lot of people have taken that and provided their input. So these are some of the quotes that came out of that. And, it's those realizations of some of the experiences that were had and how, and in that first one around it being normalized. And that again speaks to the culture where you see that, it's just the way it is, or this is, if you want to participate. So that's really kind of getting to the crux of some of the issues that are surfacing today. So a lot of the historical things that are coming up and, how people are responding. So the education and prevention are really key at this point, for sure. Okay, we'll move to the next slide. Okay. And the other thing to just reinforce, which we do through a lot of our NCP programming, but just that, we want to get to this place where it's safe for everyone. So it's safe for athletes, participants, for coaches, for sport organizations. And we started to build in different dimensions of, people's lived experiences and really trying to know your participant as an individual. And, they come from different experiences and whether it's through their home life or education or, moving from other countries and whatnot. So there's a lot of factors at play, and we want to kind of ground the sport safety conversations around that as well. So again, another high level. And we want to we'll hang out here for a minute, but I want to just give a little bit of background on how we got to this responsible coaching movement. And where it really started was, the tipping point was in 2015 with Bernard Charret case, which was the alpine ski coach that had sexually abused his athlete, and it was known to the national sport. And that's what really caused, I know our CEO, Lorraine Lafreniere, and some other key leaders in sport, like the Canadian Ethics in Sport, to host a summit to have a conversation about this and bring together a number of sport organizations, and have guest speakers like Sheldon Kennedy talk about his experiences, Scouts Canada and the scandals that they went through, and some legal counsel. And what that led to was the fact that there was a real need in the system for more education and more tools for sport organizations to implement. So I just want to move ahead to slide 8 for a second. And one of the big things that came up was around vicarious liability. And what that really means is that the actions of somebody affiliated to your organization could impact the actual organization, so those behaviors. So if you want to move to slide 9 for 1 second, just to hang out there. And this was part of the discussion, was just around the misconduct of another party, and just people, just trying to have people understand that and how to take those preventative measures to help to prevent these things from happening in the future. And so ultimately it's what led to the responsible coaching movement. So if we can just back up again, just back to 7 for a second. So just for those that may not be aware, there's the 3 steps to responsible coaching. So from that summit, this framework was put together, tons of tools. I won't go through everything, but we have tons of information on our website as well. And we'll just touch on each of these and allow some room for some questions that you might have. But essentially, we've got the rule of 2, which is about open and observable interactions to protect your athletes and coaches. The background screening, which is in addition to police information checks, just checking references, checking with former employers, and having things in place that are transparent on your website that basically demonstrate that you've got processes in place to engage and recruit talent into your organization. And then ethics training, which part of Sheldon Kennedy's work was founding Respect Group and developing the Respect in Sport training. And over 1.7 million people have taken that training to date. So pretty incredible work that he's been doing. And again, like as it says here, like it's really just trying to build a confidence in coaches and organizations to deliver safe programs. So, okay, we'll move to slide, and I apologize, slight error in my deck here. So just about background screening. So if we can go to the next slide, just to talk about, so this was really just a tool to help sport organizations. And, when you're recruiting volunteers or coaches or officials or people to help with your events, just different ways to do your screening. So whether, having application processes, references, could be driving abstracts if you require coaches or others to drive participants that are engaged in your program, and just a different level of checks that you would do. So if you were a lot of organizations will do like a local police check, which is good. Others will do criminal record check, which we really encourage people to do the enhanced police information check, because it does both a criminal record check and a local police check. And then others require the vulnerable sector check. So the vulnerable sector is, it adds another layer of a check to scan national databases for any offenses related to minors and anything in the area of child and sexual abuse. So it does add a layer. It's just that it adds complications because you need to go to a local police station. You need, and in the case of a match with other names, it could delay getting your check done. And then, not really wanting organizations to have people that have not completed that. So it's just a bit of a timing thing. And on top of that, there's no more pardons issued. So anyone was born after 1986 will not, there's only one person on the list. Like there's no one since that time that's on that list that would get checked. So it's just a couple things to keep in mind when we put processes in place. Just the ability to transfer that into somebody getting going, coaching, or doing another something else. And the results are really low for background checks in coaching in sports. It's like in the 1 to 2 percentile, which again, and those offenses could be anything from DUI or something minor from a previous. Not that it's minor, but just something that happened maybe in the youth too. So those are the types of things that usually come out of that. So I'm just going to pause. Any questions around background screening? Okay, we'll keep going then. Rule 2, this is a fun one. We did a lot of engagement over the last couple of years. And so technically Rule 2, we've had over 900 organizations that have taken the pledge and joined the responsible coaching movement. And, it's been about 5-6 years now since we implemented our responsible coaching movement, but we found out through the various engagements that we did through our Safe Sport Summits that coaches were they were required to implement Rule of Two, and we're not really clear all the time on what that meant exactly. So it caused a lot of questions to come up and different concerns and changing, for the way that people were interacting. And, there was also some pushback, which is understandable, just given, different ways that people have engaged. And then it's like all of a sudden, no, we're not doing that anymore. But it's been, it's been really positive generally, but there's definitely a lot of questions that we also continue to receive. So we are actually building a Rule of Two e-learning module this year, which will be available in early April, just to try to help people navigate through problem solving and asking questions and checking, club policies and whatnot. So we'll just go through. I'll just give a bit of information for those that may be new to hearing about Rule of Two, but essentially it's really just to ensure that interactions are open and observable and justifiable, and protect everyone that's participating in sport. And this graphic on the side is really showing like trying to avoid situations where it's a one coach, one athlete ratio, especially with minors, but also with youth and younger athletes, because of that power imbalance that just inherently exists in those relationships. And then it's kind of coded with like red, yellow, green. So in the yellow, it's if there's one coach and two athletes, that's fine. And they're showing as young people, but it could be anyone that you're working with. And then in the next sort of step up, it's got a trained coach and a screened adult with a participant. And then in the sort of like the gold standard that we used to call it was two trained coaches per athlete. And so there's different variations of that exist, but certainly it's not branded to the CAC. It is out there. There's other organizations that use it, and really it's meant to provide other protection for you. If there is an emergency, you have another person there to help. It can protect against false allegations. It can keep predators away, and so there's many benefits to having it. Just go ahead to the next slide, please. And this is great. I like to promote Swimming Canada's. They call it open and observable environments, and they added more detail around prompting questions for participants, just to it's just a bit of a check-in on where you are and how you're engaging in the different types of environments that you're in. So it was just to show another resource of how that was interpreted and implemented. All right, you can go forward. And then when COVID started in March, a lot of sports were moving to online training. So there's a need and an ask on the part of our partners to create some guidelines around training in a virtual environment. So we added an additional graphic around that with some content for training. Your online platforms, having another adult present, whether you record those sessions, but just to provide more guidelines, recommendations. So that's also another resource that's available. And in addition to that, we've created policy templates. So we have a travel policy template. We have a screening policy template. We have created like a 3-page document that has just additional information around screening and things to consider. And in particular, if you do get a positive check, how you would go through that process and manage that. And then we're now in the process of developing some guidelines in a social media and communications policy package. So it's just another area to help with, some of the areas around Rule of Two, and then also just, parameters around social media, because that's the way that our young people like to engage and receive information and communicate. So it's just to help sports navigate through that a little bit too. All right, can we see the next slide? So another question that comes up quite a bit is just about the fact that it is called a rule. And so if it's a rule, what does that mean exactly? Because, we've kind of given it that name, but essentially it only becomes a rule. Like a rule for us is a principle, or it's a way to sort of um, demonstrate the actions and behaviors you want to take. But certainly it's not a rule unless your club or your sport organization makes it a rule or makes it a policy or a bylaw of the organization. And so, we obviously would recommend it, and then it would fall under the jurisdiction of whatever organization you're affiliated to. And others use different terms. I think hockey uses 2D to 3D. There's different, like we see a lot of athlete protection or participant protection and best practices. So that's just to reinforce that is something that really needs clarity in the community. All right, we can move ahead. Just wanted to pause here on this and just ask a question. So it came up in one of our summits actually, and I just want to pose it here about, you can just put like a yes or no in the scenario or whatever you think is, an answer, or you're free to, if you want to put your hand up and speak to it as well. But for the scenario around, given what you know about Rule of Two, just based on some kind of high level information I've provided, if a coach and athlete is riding the chairlift together, would that be in violation of the Rule of Two, or would that be acceptable for Rule of Two? Any takers? From Alberta basketball? Not sure if it takes a while for people to go in the chat, or if anybody wants to provide their input. Hi, Lynette, go ahead.
Amsterdam, now streaming on Global, Fireside TV.
Yeah, so so Jennifer, yeah, thank you for the public setting with others around, so it should be okay. And so in the case of scenario one, like for sure, if you think about if it's open, yes. If it's observable, yes. It's in the sport environment, yes. So it is justifiable. But certainly, you're not in earshot. You can't be heard, which may or may not be something that an organization might be, putting into the rule. But this really depends on the organization. So, if it was like, let's say Alpine Alberta, it would really be up to them to determine if this was acceptable and that their members were aware of it, it was communicated to them, and it was an appropriate way for them to engage with their athletes. And, maybe they were looking at video of the runs and whatnot as they're going up the chairlift. So again, it's really dependent back on the sport policy. In the case of the second scenario, where we've got the coach and athlete meeting at a coffee shop to discuss the performance goals. So, if you ask the same questions around, is it open? Yes. Is it observable? Yes. Is it justifiable? Maybe. I mean, you are in a public setting, but you're not in your sport environment. And if somebody saw you, what would they think, right? Which is not a judgment; it's just a question. So it's just, those are the types of things to sort of keep in mind and ask, and that's why the Swimming Canada one was good from those questions that were asked as well. So we can, if there's any other comments or questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. But we can move forward. So the second pillar around, or the third pillar, sorry, around responsible coaching movement is around the education and, we specifically say ethics and respect training, but there's other training as well. And so really just wanted to highlight some of the different training that is available and, anything else that you might want to share. But of course, I have Shawnee Hurley there in the top corner, which I know is Alberta coach and she's done a lot of work with us as well. So a really good role model for responsible coaching. Okay, so we can advance, and this is basically our foundational NCCP module. So make ethical decisions is a module that was developed back in 2003, and was really a reflection of an audit that was done by the government, where there wasn't a lot of ethics training happening in sport programs. So it became evident that it was something that should be required across the NCCP, which is our partnership of our 65 national sport organizations and the 13 provincial and territorial coaching representatives that deliver NCCP programs. So it's very much a partnership-based program, and we rely heavily on those partners to develop content that's sport-specific and deliver content that's multi-sport that we develop, and then they deliver to coaches. So this training for any NCCP coach to be considered trained, they would have the make ethical decisions training, and then for any coach to be NCCP certified, they would need the make ethical decisions evaluation. So it's obviously something that we promote not only through our NCCP, but through our responsible coaching movement in Spaceport as well. And it has like a 6-step process and really helps the coach navigate through different scenarios and make decisions. And the module is set up to also like not always have the most obvious answer as one of your choices. So really have to navigate through various options to arrive at a decision and go forward with that in place. And then I guess we can move on to, so I mentioned earlier around Sheldon Kennedy and founding Respect Group and building this Respect in Sport training. And so it is mandatory in Manitoba, I think it's Saskatchewan as well. So there's been a lot of, not only coaches, but a lot of sport participants that have taken the training. And, it's part of Hockey Canada's program, and Gymnastics Canada also has implemented it. And there are many others as well. And they recently revised the training to be aligned with the what is like for the federal government level is the Universal Code of Conduct for the Prevention of Maltreatment in Sport, which all national sport organizations have to adopt. And with that, they have to provide mandatory training to all their national team participants. So athletes, coaches, decision makers, everyone that's involved. So Respect Group and the CAC Spaceport Training are two of the trainings that are available to anyone. Ours, the Spaceport Training is free, and the Respect Training there is a fee. And but it's online and it's available to everyone. Okay, we'll keep going on some of the training pieces. There's another module that was developed that's about. So it's with the Canadian Center for Child Protection, which is a partner of ours. And the partnership really came out of the fact that we did national spaceport summits across Canada with all stakeholders. And one of the big conversation pieces was around age of consent. So what was happening was that there were relationships that had happened between coaches and athletes, which could have been like after their career ended, once they were adults, but nonetheless, it was definitely a hot topic, and really brought to light the fact that there was more education needed around age consent, and that was built into the Universal Code of Conduct as well. But this education was also came about due to just the fact that grooming is something that um, you know, the resources that are provided around this make it such that we really need to have those preventative measures in place, because it's difficult to prevent grooming if you have like things happening or online that you're not aware of, and you have athletes that transition to coaching, and so the police checks, like, they might never come into play if you have someone that is potentially a predator, or going through this grooming stages. So this is really an education piece around that, and it's a bit of a tough module, but it's also very good and very helpful to educate in that area and what you can do. And there's tons of resources on the site as well for educators and for love the cyber tips and a lot of research based. So encourage you to go to that site as well if you're ever looking for anything related to child development. Okay, we can move ahead here. Also, Kids Help Phone, we also developed a partnership with Kids Help Phone that they do a lot of services to support children, youth, and even adults, especially through COVID. They had texting service, and a lot of the calls that they get are around issues in relationships, so unhealthy relationships, and that was like one of the top areas of why people were calling in. It was just another resource, and it's also a tool for coaches too. When you notice something with an athlete, or they might disclose something to you that you may not have all the answers, but if you have some additional resources, you can definitely point them in the direction of Kids Help Phone, or even the Center for Child Protection, or other services that are available like in your own province too. Okay, we'll keep going. Yeah. So the other thing is there's a lot of new education modules that have been developed over the last year and are happening in this year and into next year as well. And it was really just to provide more just options for youth coaches if you're looking for things. So we launched a new called Creating a Positive Sport Environment. So it has some of the Spaceport Training content built into it and a bit around the duty to report, but it's really focused around creating those positive relationships with your athletes, and that within that culture, and having difficult conversations. So it's really shifting a little bit of like into the away from the what not to do into the what to do, and how to create those environments and that they're safe and welcoming for you and for your participants. The mental health in sport also launched in May of 2021, and so that's really a tool to help support coaches and help coaches support their athletes as well. And then we also built the Leading a Return to Sport, which does have elements of COVID in it, but it's a little bit more generic as well, just to have a bit of a longer shelf life. But certainly it just provides tools for coaches for just having a bit of insight into, again, knowing your participant and where they might be coming from, and maybe being afraid to get back into sport and not quite ready. And so it's just a way to help, again, provide more tools. And then we have this Support Through Sport series, and the project was funded by the Public Health Agency of Canada, and it was in the theme of gender-based violence and teen-dating violence. So there were a lot of dollars put forward for a lot of different agencies and sectors to apply for some funding in this area. So it was an opportunity for us because there wasn't a lot of resources available in sport. And on top of it, there wasn't, it was an area that we felt we needed a bit more information about the role of coach in this area. And, and what came out of the surveys that were done with athletes and coaches was that both felt that the role of a coach would be to listen and support and be able to provide resources. And so, the expectation again is not that coaches need to be an expert in everything, because there's so many things that coaches do and are responsible for, but really just a way to help, again, with tools to know what teenagers might be going through, but also recognizing the signs, or being open to those conversations and what you would say. So we created a lot of advocacy and other materials to help support that. And we launched the Understanding Teen Dating Violence in June, and then we're building the gender-based violence. We changed it to bystander empowerment, and the modeling of healthy relationships are going to launch in June of 2022. And in addition to that, on the left side over there, as I mentioned, we're building the Understanding the 2 module. We're building an anti-racism and coaching module, and we're doing a bit of a refresh on our responsible coaching movement campaign, and we're creating an informational video, and just doing a bit of a push out to the larger sport community as well. So you'll see more things coming down in February, March, April timeframe for sure. Okay, yeah, so I just mentioned those. So we've got about 15 minutes, so I have a few other slides. It's just all really just to showcase some of the different resources, but happy to take any questions. These are all the posters I mentioned. They're all on our site under Support Through Sport. Just ways where even if there's like a disclosure, just things that you would say, like I believe you, this shouldn't have happened to you, things like that. So it's really just there's a call model there, which basically gives you some steps to talk to go through in terms of like asking questions, etc. and listening and whatnot. So there's tons there. We can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so not a very pretty slide, sorry about that, but I took a screenshot of what we have in the locker. So that's our database, and we house all of our e-learning in there. So it's just a list of everything that's available. And we also have some of our partners that have modules in there. So for example, Special Olympics Canada has developed 3 modules, one of which is like a diversity 101, and it talks about unconscious bias, and that's available for free. And so in the top left side here, where it says multi-sport, you can select Special Olympics, and you'll see those modules come up. So just a lot of other great initiatives happening in our sport community. And then we can keep going through here. So yeah, so we just hosted our sport leadership conference, and SPRCC it's the Sport Dispute Resolution Center of Canada, and they have a number of services they provide, including some pro bono lawyer services, and just for like if just with the way that the reporting of any maltreatment occurs, there's a process that you go through an independent third party, and then if you need to go into an investigation and need a lawyer, that's not always a viable option for people that are involved. So there's some pro bono program there that can help with getting some legal advice, etc. But this slide was sort of the way that they ended their presentation, and they're becoming an independent safe sport mechanism. So they'll be the ones fielding complaints. Any reports they'll have the Canadian Sport Helpline is already part of the services they provide around safe sport, and they're building a sort of an intake form so people can write in online, and then they can take a look at it and determine if it warrants a full investigation or if their mediation could be involved. And so sports can sign up, and it'll be a service, you pay for this service, but the more organizations that sign up with the service, obviously the less the fees will be. And it's really just a way to implement a lot of the work that's been done around safe sport at the federal level. And with the launch of this, it's going to take a bit of time for them to get going, but they're definitely interested in servicing provincial and territorial partners as well. And they have some of the resources around policy development, so especially around the code of conduct and complaints process, and some of the educational pieces, and then just really trying to take the most efficient route to resolving any conflicts or anything of a more serious nature. So that's I just wanted to highlight the the existence of this organization and some of the work that they have been doing and are going to continue to do in the safe sport space. And just the fact that, you know, they have, like, safe sport is, you know, everyone's business and everyone has a role to play, and just reinforcing that through the various roles. Not that it has to be so specific to a person's role, but definitely these are all great examples of ways that we can all, you know, play that role and keep sport safe. All right, I guess we can move on to the next slide. Yeah, so just, you know, just on a positive note, like, you know, we want to support our coaches. We feel that, you know, they're the ones that really are on the ground and implementing a lot of the safe sport practices, and, you know, we want to support them and also, you know, make sure everyone's safe and is protected, because, you know, we want people to participate in sport, and we know all the benefits because we're all here because we enjoy it and we're passionate about it. And, you know, it can do great things for society in general. And I guess we'll move to, yeah, I had this slide here as well, and it's just depending on time, but we do have a professional coaching program, and it's called there's Chartered Professional Coaches, and we have various pathways, but essentially it lines up really nicely with the responsible coaching movement, because part of going through the process is the fact that you have some education, you have some experience, you've done some ethics training, and you have there's an ethical declaration, there's a code of conduct and a code of ethics. We've implemented the Spaceport Training into the pathway and program. There's the police information check, there's references that are provided, and then with that, there are a number of services that we provide to the coaches as well. And this program, whether it's a chartered or registered coach, are requirements for any coaches that are going to the Paralympic or Olympic Games, the Commonwealth Games, or Pan Am Games. So it was just to highlight another program that's available to the community. And then I think I might only have 2 slides. Yeah, so really just to sort of summarize, you know, just the call to action is really just if you want to join the movement, take the pledge. We have some other support services we can provide to sports that do sign up, and you know, just another way to promote safety in the organization and demonstrate that you're committed to not only this, but just those safe environments that you want to create for your participants. And, you know, when parents are shopping around for different sports and what they want to put their kids in, that they're starting to notice some of these programming areas that are part of the offerings for any participant, really. So on that, I think I just have the one slide, which is just the final slide, but really want to open the floor if you have any questions, if there's anything that you want to comment on, or other things that I maybe didn't cover. We have 8 minutes.